In one of my earlier podcasts, I mentioned that one group I plan to interview were leading executives in the AI space. And in today's session, we'll be talking to Skip Howard, the CEO of Spacee. Skip, welcome to the podcast. I really appreciate you doing this today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's gonna be fun.
And then Skip and I met at a meetup that he hosted his Spacee facility in Dallas. And in the first session I attended in that meetup, Skip demonstrated his products. And I was immediately taken by what these guys were doing, and I was impressed by Skip and his staff. So to get started, Skip, can you kind of explain your background and how you got into AI, starting with your education and then your career building up to Spacey?
Yeah. So I went to school really before they were teaching web technologies. So I went to school in West Texas, public institution, Texas Tech University, great little school. Um, and so I've always been kind of entrepreneurial, and so I bought a book and taught myself how to basically code in classic ASP back in the day, and they were not teaching it in school anywhere. So
Yeah.
because of that, I've got a job at the university. Built a commercialized system that we built there to track kids that had violations according to the code of conduct and all of that. Ended up selling that to pretty much, I don't know, most of the universities around the United States. Left that, started a company, right, to go do that as a co-founder with an investor. Left that, went to work for Ross Perot Jr. And when I was working there, I went to a hackathon, how I got started in computer vision, right? I went to a hackathon on how to break open an Xbox Connect controller and how to rewrite the firmware and then program against it. And light bulbs were going off left and right. I just saw the future, right, of this little $100 camera and what it could do and what it meant for natural user interface and natural, computing. And so I thought, initially I was going to make the world interactive, and then fast forward, we ended up, founded Spacee, this company, and we ended up getting into supply chain robotics and going heavy into computer vision. So I don't know if that's enough detail for you. If you want to.
Yeah, that's great. That's perfect. And so, what were your initial thoughts about potential products you might create when you when you started Spacey? I mean, what was in your mind?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, like every good company pivots, right? Um, I
Absolutely.
I thought I had some friends that owned some restaurants, and I thought, oh my gosh, what we're gonna do is we're gonna put an interactive menu in a window, and so the very first thing I built was basically putting a putting a camera on top of a television that looks at people. So when you do these gestures, that you can actually browse the menu of a restaurant.
Oh yeah.
So these friends of mine are like, "Yeah, we want to do that," and I go and I build it and I show it off, and they're like, "Yeah, this sucks." I'm like, "What do you mean
Yeah.
that sucks?" And they're like, "Well, look, I've
Yeah.
got to do this to go up and down, and then this and this. Why can't I just touch it?"
Yeah.
Like, so after a while, I was like, "Yeah, you know what? They're right." So my first patent actually that I had issued was basically taking a camera that looks out into the world and sequestering the top 20% of the video feed by using a mirror and creating a conic plane in front of the television or any surface in front, and basically turning 20% of the video feed into a touch screen and 80% into standard facial recognition and gestures and whatever we wanted to do in the world. And so anyway, that's great. And I started the company. That's a long way to say we started building touch screens. So we were able to turn any two-dimensional and three-dimensional object into a touch screen. We did cars. There's still today, this is live, right? You can go visit Sam's Club and you can see it in a Sam's Club where we're making interactive end caps and things like that. We have, all over the world, we have installations in Switzerland and Brussels and United States where we're making virtual touchscreens. But that's what I first thought we were going to do. And I'll tell you a little story about how we got into these supply chain robots and really what that is and what what the computer vision application is for that in a second. But we're over at Coca-Cola in Brussels, and I don't know if I'm supposed to be saying brand names or not, but we're in their
Yeah, I think it's
lab.
fine. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not really, we're not breaking any NDAs. This was a very, very long time ago. So we're over there, and so one of the things they ordered was they wanted a Coke bottle, a Coke Light, which is our Diet Coke, and a Coke Zero to be interactive. So you pick up a bottle, and the television displays an ad for it. And so all we did was we attached a camera to the table, a camera on top of the TV looking at the table, and we made a lift and learn. Really, really simple. No RFID tags, no barcode reading. It just did image classification object, image detection, yeah, image classification object detection overlaid on our virtual touch environment. And so it wasn't not rocket science, but so we're over there, we're doing that. And the lady who ordered it is like, this is what I wanted, but I'm going to teach you guys, this is not how they use this in the retail world. And she mixes it up. She's like, customers will take it here and put it here. And you got to deal with imperfections. And we're like, okay. And so she picks it up and it works. And she goes, how the hell did you do that? Right. And so what I just explained, we used this image recognition piece where we moved it around. And so we told her, and she looked at us and goes, does that mean you can tell me how many are on this table? And we're like, yeah, we can tell you how many Cokes are on this table. And she said, follow me. So she took us to a grocery store and said, if you can tell me how many Cokes are on these shelves in all of Europe, that's worth hundreds of millions of dollars to my company. I won't say the exact number because it's mind boggling.
Right.
And we were like, yeah, we should probably go do that. And that's how we got started in the supply chain side of the business. And it turns out that is a massive value in using computer vision to track supply chain problems. And there's more than just inventory, right? There's a lot more. Billions of dollars of problems can be solved with very, very inexpensive IoT devices.
I agree with your assessment of what you're making and what it can be used for. The market for it is deep and wide.
Yes.
So very excited about it. So can you describe your product? The grocery store one that
Sure.
you're currently manufacturing, and if you have any slides or anything you want to put up, let me make you the presenter, and
Okay.
and then you can.
Yeah, happily. I'll show you what we built. It's a little unique, and we'll talk it through for people that listen in audio only. But let me share my screen real quick. So here we are. Hopefully you can see that.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Okay. So these are the three IoT devices that we created. One of them is a miniature. In fact, if you look at my screen, this is it live. Probably should have started there. It's a little 8-inch by 1-inch by 1-inch robot that lives on a price channel. So it's not in an aisle and it's not in the sky. It's attached to a shelf. And I'll show you it working in 1 second. But
Okay.
this is really the star of the show. So over the years, we went through many iterations to get to where we are to this commercializable version. And it drives back and forth and looks at inventory. So this covers about 92 to 95% of a location for all the inline inventory. And that's really lots of value. Then we just took the wheels off and made our own webcam version of it. And then we also have a little LiDAR sensor. So to get into what it looks like, I'm going to skip ahead here. This is the sensor moving on a shelf. So what you're looking at is
Oh, cool.
a metal rail attached to a shelf, and you just add metal, $20 of metal every 4 or 5 feet, and you just make it as long as the aisle. So it's a shared camera resource that goes up and down the entire aisle, driving with a moving field of view that looks across the aisle and does all of these inferences. Couple key points that this is not meant to be a sales. We're really talking about AI. But one of my principles I've learned is that you can go develop what a client tells you to develop, and you can probably get a sale. But if you don't understand why they're telling you what they want, and you also don't understand the conditions and restrictions around all the other things they're not telling you,
Right.
like you can't, it's going to be very difficult to scale. Let's say that. So because we worked in some large retailers before doing the touchscreen technology, we knew a whole lot of constraints about running power and using the in-store internet and management and support and cost, like all of these things that nobody tells you about. So, just understanding the why helped us build uh, a really inexpensive system that is one of the only sustainable robotics platforms on Earth. Like these guys take 1 watt of energy. They don't need power drops. So we do it over PoE drops. Um, all of the AI is run at the edge. So you're not streaming this to a web service because it'd be terabytes of information you're streaming. Well, that costs a lot of money. That's tens of millions of dollars in transfer costs, right?
Right.
And so if you do it with a really, moderately inexpensive server at the edge, you don't have any of those costs. So all of these things go in to when you create products. So really, and we're going to get into this in a little bit, but my philosophy is AI is one tool out of many tools you should be using. It's not the silver bullet. It is going to change everything. We're in its infancy, but it is not like everything, right? You still
Right.
need mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, uh, traditional programming, health monitoring, and even just process change, all mixed in with AI to kind of create these product suites. So with that, we were able to do things like this, and this looks like it's standard, but what we're showing you here is an image classification, object detection in real time, up and down the aisle. I think this one has 300 items on the aisle, and it's creating an internal skew based on what we see. This run happens to be at 99% accurate. That's not a real thing in AI. You can't be 100%.
Right.
Um, yeah, so we're actually recognizing the products by the products, and we use semi-supervised learning to get there. And then we have a whole lot of other use cases, but this is the overview. I could go really, really deep into all the other cool stuff it does, which I'm happy to do, but since we're talking about AI, I'm not going to try to make this a sales pitch here.
Well, one thing I do want to point out, one thing I was really impressed with when you showed it to me originally was that you can actually see back in those aisles, and you can with reasonable accuracy determine how many of each item are on the shelf.
Yeah.
So
So what you're looking at here is an out of stock detector and a planogram compliance detector. So you would have different deep neural networks applied to different use cases. So inventory, theft, uh, you know, product integrity would be one. Did advertisement get deployed to the shelf? Like all of these are different detectors. We even have a price and label detector. We can tell you if the price is right, all of that stuff. But these are like different layers that you would just turn on and turn off. But yeah, that's absolutely right. The whole point of this is if a human eye can see it, a computer can do it if it's a niche application. It's a
yeah,
niche
very, very
application.
impressive stuff. I'm excited to see where this goes over time because it's going to
Yeah,
expand.
yeah.
And you mentioned earlier when I talked to you at your facility that you guys, you really built a lot of your own hardware. Like you extruded your own metal for those rails and everything. How did you get into doing that? What drove you to do it yourself, and how did you actually do it?
So the metal's the easy part. I'm going to probably focus on this little robot that we did.
Okay.
So, we are experts in computer vision, artificial intelligence. There's many, many types. Generative is a new buzzword, which we can talk about, but computer vision based AI in real time is pretty difficult to do. And computer vision, when you're building a computer vision application, how you do data collection really matters, right? It's a symbiotic relationship between the physical data collection piece and the algorithms in the digital world, right?
Right.
And so, like, your resolution really matters. Your lighting conditions matter. Your field of view matters. If it's moving or static matters. And there's like a lot of variables that actually matter. So when we were looking at doing this, like after about 3 months, like years and years and years ago, about putting cameras on a shelf, we're like, man, you're going to have problems with people in the way, occlusions. You're going to lose images. You're not going to be able to control directions. You're going to have gaps when stalkers make mistakes and all of that. So we kind of figured all of that out early on. And so the only way to really control the data collection piece was to build it. So we designed our own boards. Um, we wrote our own drivers to these things. And so because we can control every variable on how we do our data collection, and we have awesome algorithms, we can outperform basically theoretical limits. Um, and that's how we're able to actually do this, and we're able to beat these companies that have billions of dollars, in funding and all of that. Um, because of, and that's one of the secrets, I should say, not the only secret, but that's one of the principles in computer vision. If we're just going to buy a camera off of Alibaba, you're going to hit these limits, and for example, like you might get to 80% accurate with a camera that's off the shelf, and you could spend millions of dollars in years to get to 81% accurate, right? Versus if you just change the way you think. So we kind of took the hard approach. And because we had to build these things and we wanted a moving field of view, like designing metal around it, that was easy, right? Designing clips, universal clips, that was easier. Power, well, we put our own constraints when we built this thing. It's not high power. It's got very little onboard processing, and most of the heavy lifting is on a server on site, right? So we control every little variable, and we kind of have this federated AI, if you can think of it like that, um, where it makes the most sense and most bang for your buck to try to get to the lowest price point too, because you got to remember retailers don't make a lot of money. They maybe make 1 or 2 points of margin. If you're really good and you can get up to 8 points, that's great. But if you're going to turn on billings and value, you still have to have a low cost. So
Yeah,
these are very,
exactly.
very low cost.
Yeah, years ago we tried to sell RFID into the grocery business and found out very quickly it didn't make much sense. You can't put a 10-cent tag on a 43-cent can of corn because the economics aren't there.
Right.
So one thing I wanted to ask, how did you initially get started? Did you bootstrap it, or did you get some angel investing, and then how to go from there?
It's a good question. So when we first started, I started the company solo for a couple of years, and I didn't do a lot of movement. And then I brought on some co-founders, and we basically I sold about $1 million in contracts. Remember, we started with the virtual touch technology,
Yeah,
right? And
right.
we started there, something a little simpler than what you're looking at here. This took a lot of money, and I'm happy to talk about all that. But uh, we started there, so I made a lot of sales myself before we took any investment. And then when we got to the point where you're dealing with, like, the Fortune 1 company of the world and the Fortune 30 company, I forgot what number they are now, but these really big companies that require a lot of resources to go handle and to grow, like you're not going to bootstrap that. You have to go raise money. So we went and we raised some money, and I started the whole, hey, we have about 1 million in sales. We have these, contracts, and we went with some angel investors to start with. We raised about 3 million when we started, at about a $15 million valuation, and then, through that wasn't even a year into that where we saw the opportunity to do supply chain, and our investors backed us heavily on that. They said, "Yeah, we got you, and we want to go do that." So, I mean, I would kind of wish we would have done some of this a little differently, and probably our investors do too, right?
Yeah,
Throughout the last few years, but you know, this we probably spent, I don't know, 14, $15 million building all of this out, and
yeah.
so we have to go raise all of that money to go do that, and we're working with some of the largest companies on earth, in pilot mode and all of that. So.
So for people who are thinking about starting something like this, the quicker you can get to revenue, the better.
Yeah, you got to get to revenue. That is a big lesson. There's two big lessons learned, on the financing side. One, uh, you have all these. How do I say it? If you get a big fish, like a big, even Fortune 5,000 company, right? A
Right.
big fish, and they want to move forward, they're going to go so much slower than you ever thought,
Oh yeah.
because it's really hard to turn a big ship. You hear
High
this.
risk.
Yeah, and you're going to think, oh, I'm different, but you're not. Even if it's going to, clearly the ROI is, we're going to save $1 billion and it's going to cost me a penny, it's still going to take a very long time to get that through. It just is. And so that was a big, hard lesson to learn. Um, and then number two is you always have to have money in the bank. You better have some runway if you're going to raise money. You can't run out, or you can't get close to running out, because it doesn't matter how awesome your tech is, right? That's a problem. And number three is getting revenue. Any revenue is more important than how awesome your pipeline is. So these are all just You know, I like to call it a very expensive training that I went through, right? In order to get some of these. So if I was to do it over again, I may not have, had 80 Fortune 500 companies in my pipeline. I probably would have gotten some smaller guys, um, shown the revenue, shown the progress. And so we're kind of going backwards. We're doing a lot of that now. Um, but I still have 80, Fortune 500s in my pipeline. I still have massive companies. So it costs a lot and it takes a long time to go after the bigger fish when
Yeah,
you could probably execute on the smaller ones earlier. And so there's always this as an entrepreneur, you have this sense of urgency. Ooh, somebody else is going to come do something similar and you got to hurry. And I got to hurry, but just know thy market, right? Know your market. Our market is retailers and warehouse, and they just don't move fast,
no,
right?
yeah. Well, there's so much risk and so much planning required to do it. And, you have to test everything out to the nth degree. You have to make sure it's completely bulletproof because once you start to spend the money, it's difficult to reel it back in.
Yeah. I mean, I could go after, I mean, we've been doing this for years. There's some things I've learned, like, it's actually less risk for them to say no if nobody knows about you than it is to say yes. And you might, even if it's 5% chance, you might not perform, um, for these big companies. So, and that's weird to an entrepreneur. That's weird to
Yeah.
people in the world.
Well,
But
on every board of directors, there's an audit committee, and that audit committee consists of people, and their responsibility is to assess the risk to the company. So they're reviewing pretty much anything like this, anything that's going to be a big spend, and they're actually legally liable to make sure that the company is aware of the risks of any potential endeavor. So that's who you're really running into. In the final analysis, you're running into the audit committee.
yeah, if you're going to start a company and you're going to go B2B and forget retail, right?
Right.
The pattern that's been tried and true, and no matter what investors tell you, you should probably follow is find one really, really solid client that can actually pay for you and get a reference account going. Do a
Absolutely.
discount, do whatever you got to do. Put a reference account together. Make sure you white glove service the heck out of these guys. Make sure they get everything they want because people will call them. How was it? What do you like working? What's your ROI? All of that. And if you can
Absolutely.
get one solid one, then you should grow from there a little more organically. And then you should start putting the fuel on the fire, not just when you get demand, because everybody and their mother will want to talk to you, right? If you
Yeah.
got something really special, but it's the execution that is the most important piece.
Absolutely. Sure. Yeah. They need to know that you're going to be there and you're going to get it done right.
Yep.
And so, the device itself, does it communicate over Wi-Fi?
Ours has multiple ways. Right now, we're using Wi-Fi, and it's noisy in stores. Wi-Fi is noisy in stores.
It is, yeah.
But we do micro batches, so we run every 20 minutes. We're not running in real time. You
Right.
try to get as real time as you can with the cost as low as possible. Real time running terabytes of video is, would require like a data center in every location, and that starts pricing you out. So micro batches every 20 minutes. It's basically we're stacking up these robots. You might have like anywhere from 40 to 100 of these in a store, not thousands. And then it takes about a minute to get their package out to the server. So,
Yeah, that
you
makes sense.
stack them up. You get two or three running at a time. That's it.
And so, do you have like a little agent running on the device where you've got some management software that pings it and makes sure that it's actually running and reliable and there, and
Oh yeah.
fine?
Oh yeah. We had to do that. So
I
over
figured that.
over COVID, we were deployed in Australia, and that was a pretty tough country to work in over COVID, right? It
Oh
had
yeah.
lots of lockdowns for years, and I mean, there weren't even people to receive equipment. You couldn't even leave your house to receive equipment, right? So it was pretty bad. So by the time we got installed, and the country goes into lockdown again, and you don't have anybody that can go visit. So we had to develop over-the-air updates, and it was really cool because we felt like we were NASA. We were sitting there,
Oh yeah.
looking at a rover on Mars.
Oh yeah.
Oh, update code, and it goes from our developer to our cloud to the Australian cloud down to the endpoint with server on the store, and then updates the robots which give and acknowledge all the way back through, and then you watch the run, and it was really cool because there's no hands touching it, and that was a really special moment for us.
And so, if one drops offline, will it automatically reconnect to it, reboot it, and And then who watches for one that's actually down? Is it the client in the store, or is there a management center that watches all the devices for that company and like how they manage their network? They're monitoring their Wi-Fi to make sure it's up.
You don't do that. We have we try to take out people from the loop. We don't want people in the loop. Like legitimately don't want people in the loop, not minimize, right? Because it's not a need. And so nobody has to go check on these. If they don't check in after a given cadence, like if they miss 2 runs, that's a notice,
Got it.
right? If it's and we can already kind of self-diagnose if there's a Wi-Fi issue or what. So these things are communicating back and forth with the server with little packages. Then the actual runtime package, to the server, the inference happens. We take the terabytes, turn it into kilobytes. That goes into the cloud. So there's many stops along the way to figure out what's wrong and what goes wrong. So even if one of these like breaks somehow, we have hot spares. The only time a person needs to, do anything is a store manager gets notified, hey, pull one of these out of your back, take out the old one, it'll drive out, turn it on, pop in the new one, auto provisions, no IT rollout. So like we've had to go through all that because we've run into those problems. I mean,
Oh
dude,
yeah.
we had to become UL certified because forklifts would hit it, right? And
Oh
so
yeah.
now it takes like 3,600 pounds of pressure to bend a piece of metal. So they're, not indestructible, but forklifts don't damage them anymore. So
Yeah,
like
that's great.
all that's really important. Um, but most important, out of all that stuff is the shopping experience, which we haven't really talked about yet. So we like to call them our invisible rovers, invisible robots, um, because they're really invisible to the shopping experience. They're like on one top shelf, out of the way, hidden, all of that stuff. So they're not in people's way. You're not on camera. Actually, we GDPR compliant. We exclude people from it. So all that to say is like, um, I guess I keep coming up with all these principles. We have quite a few we operate from, but like, don't fall in love with the technology. Fall in love with the problems,
Yeah.
and then solve it with technology. But like I said, it could be a mix of a lot of things. Like technology can solve a lot, but so can process change. So can
You bet.
thinking differently, right? All of that. So um, when you understand the problem and all the components, and there's a lot more than you initially think, you really understand it, you can start to get creative around that. So that's what we did.
Interesting stuff. So, I wanted to ask too, in your facility right now, you're offering up space for young startups to come in and potentially share space with you guys. Can you talk to me about how you envision startups working together and what they can gain from one another? Because I thought this was a fabulous idea on your
Yeah.
part.
Yeah. So, it's not like it's rocket science or revolutionary thought process, but we're an AI company, computer vision AI company, and we thought it'd be awesome to create a community of other non-competitive AI companies in Dallas, Texas. And so, for fun, by the way, to back up a little bit, I also run one of the largest computer vision developers groups in the nation. I think we're either number one or number two in size. Um, and but it's a niche of AI, it's computer vision. And so there's a lot of AI companies in Dallas, and every single city on the face of Earth, I swear, is trying to become a big player in AI. They don't want to miss it,
Right.
right? And so we can actually do something about that. So I created an AI center. And so if you go to like, I think it's aicenter.tech is the website, super, super creative name. Um, you can come join. It's not about making money off of people. It's just about creating a community where you're with like-minded people that, might need advice from time to time, might want to collaborate, um, and actually create a destination for artificial intelligence in the city of DFW. So that's, I wish I could say that was kicking off earlier. I was trying to do that earlier and had to focus on some Spacee stuff, but now it's really taking off. So
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I mean, it's one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast is to educate and, giving them access to yours and your guys' experiences uh, could save them incredible effort.
yeah,
'Cause-
we have amazing talent in the city. That's something I didn't realize. I mean, the guy who actually there was an old company called Matayo. Sorry, I'm going a little
That's
tangential.
okay. I'm interested.
Uh, Matayo was like one of the first augmented reality companies that was the gold standard. Apple bought them, and the head of R&D lives in Dallas, and he had his team here. So like Apple AR tech um, is based off of the work of a Dallas guy.
I
There's so
didn't.
many little pockets like that. You have the CEO of Worlds, which is doing digital twinning here, and so that company's based here. You have I mean, just there's so I could go on and on and on, but there's so many of these awesome companies in Dallas that do AI. And really, you can go back and thank Texas Instruments for hiring like really thousands of engineers, training them over years,
Oh
and then
yeah,
like shutting down a business line because they were a little too ahead of their time. That's TI. TI gets ahead of their time
they
quite a bit.
do. Yeah.
That's how we have all these pockets of people. You can thank TI for that, right?
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, because they were all along that corridor off of 75 originally, and then they started to spread out through Dallas. But you're right, and there are other technology companies here in Dallas like Raytheon that also did some of those same things. They brought in absolutely brilliant people, and then for whatever reason, they would shut down a line. All those people would go out and start businesses, and just
Yeah.
fabulous technology resulted from it.
So we have world class like leaders, and we have college kids, and we have everybody in between. So
Yeah,
everybody should be welcome. That's what a community is, right? It's about how to learn from each other
yeah.
and not be exclusive, but inclusive, right? And that's the goal.
Yeah. So what does your typical day look like? What do you do? Like, most days when you come in, I mean, I know you're doing some hours, and anybody in a company like yours is going to work hard, but what are the things that you typically do on an everyday
Well,
basis?
uh, I personally have been focused on fundraising for quite a while. So that's probably half my day. Because we're always fundraising. I swear it's like when you start fundraising, you can't stop. So we're trying to fuel our growth there. But that's about half my day. The other half is working with our engineering team and making sure we're on the path and getting plans. And then I check in with ops. Been doing that a whole lot more lately, actually. Um, being sometimes some accounts, like when you're with the Fortune 1 or Fortune 2 companies in the world, you want to really manage, make sure you don't mess
Yeah,
up.
yeah,
And then,
exactly right. Yeah,
dude, and I could say that for a lot of accounts we have. So I try to make sure that I'm a part of that. Um, and um, then there's what I really love doing is the R&D side of things. So there's like new product development and all of that. Spacey has slowed on that, so it's a little frustrating. But there's like the biggest problem is there's so much we could go solve,
oh yeah,
so much you can solve um, with computer vision, and it's like it feels like the internet in 1996 right now.
it does.
Like yeah, and so I created a new entity called Computer Visionaries, and really it's just to feed my R&D side. And so we're gonna go solve some really big problems and hope maybe license some spacey tech to go do it all above board. Like that's the goal.
Yeah,
Make it win-win. Um, but Spacey is focused on delivering value through these supply chain robots and these virtual touchscreens, and that's a good thing.
yeah, it is. It's definitely something that Vodem has interest in. You guys are doing some very heady stuff, and that we believe our clients will like that stuff a lot. Um, so, what do you think about the current public discussions regarding AI? Fear of AI. Societal danger. Um, what do you think about those discussions, and what do you think is going to happen over the next 3 to 5 years? What do you think we're actually going to produce as a community?
So like I understand the curve. Like so if you ever listen to Ray Kurzweil or Singularity
Oh yeah,
thought processes, I get the curve that we're going to get there. And there's another curve on artificial intelligence that, is an exponential curve and that's really what people are talking about. We have artificial niche intelligence right now today that can perform very well. Chat GPT is actually a narrow or ANI, artificial narrow intelligence, niche
it is.
intelligence. It's still, that's what it is. It's just using large models as of today. Um, and of course, awesome algorithms. But lots of them. It looks like one unique system, but I'm pretty sure it's lots of them.
Yeah.
It's still narrow, right? And if you follow the curve, we're going to get to general intelligence, which is like AI as smart as a human being. And if you follow the curve, super intelligence, which is what everybody's talking about when they say, oh, they're building a digital god and all of that. That's ASI, super intelligence. That's like a day after general intelligence is
Yeah,
created because the
exactly.
curve is like so exponential. And so all of that is real. But I have to say, like working in it and working in this field, um, the algorithms have to just be vastly different than what we have today.
Yeah.
And the compute power needs to be just, you know, at least 10 years into the future before it's even feasible. Not that it's not going to happen. We should probably, I might be wrong. It might happen sooner, but I just don't see it with the current algorithms. Because I mean, really, it's math, right?
It
It's math.
is. Yeah.
And the one difference in machine learning specifically is like, traditional programming was you ask you put an input in, you give it an algorithm, and you get an output. And machine learning is you put an input in, you give it your output, and it's supposed to spit out your algorithm to go use in the future, right? And that's called a model.
Right.
Well, I mean that's generally generalized, but um, so it's a little bit different thought. But the algorithm is just like it's not overly complex, and you can layer them all up to get what looks right at the end. But the machine doesn't actually know what it's doing. It doesn't have like consciousness really.
Right.
So I don't get as scared as everybody else in the world about AI. In fact, you probably know this. I wrote over July 4th while we're watching a couple of movies. I wrote a website called Bad AI Advice, just to show. So you go to badaiadvice.com and you type in a question, it gives you like the wrong answer on purpose, right? It gives you a supposed to be funny wrong answer,
That's
but
funny.
it's
I look forward to
yeah,
playing with that.
yeah, it's just like, all these models that are created are based off of existing data. So
Yeah.
like when you're scraping the internet for your data or reading books, like you can only be as good as your source material. We were talking earlier, like if you wanted to teach a computer how to how to recognize a cake, you can get a million images of cakes, but unless you tell it what a cookie is, it's not going to tell you, oh, this is a cookie.
It
It's
has
not
to
even
have
going to
comparisons.
know.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Even if you just do it once, it's like highly unlikely it'll be worth anything that it can actually recognize a cookie in the future. But like people are a little different. We're more creative beings. And so I think that the algorithms have to get vastly more sophisticated. Not that they won't, but I just I don't know. I think if you focus on the narrow intelligence and which is task oriented AI, like what we're doing, which is, looking at products on a shelf.
Yeah.
That is task oriented AI. If you can do that really, really well, you're going to win. And I still do think like you need people in the loop, just not in the task oriented AI, in the business rules and the fulfillment and the actual doers and all of that. You still need people.
Well,
Um,
to create AI for most people like you and me, you've got to build something that you can make money from.
yeah,
And, general AI is such a gigantic set of algorithms to put together over time. It's going to take companies with very deep pockets like Google or Amazon, IBM, Microsoft, Facebook, people like that. And it's going to take them time to do it as well. And
yeah. I mean,
I'd like
in,
us to get a look inside and see where they really are today. And I think we'll probably get that at some point here. But,
well,
you
the
know,
one thing I haven't really talked about is if you add quantum computing to it, like that's a pretty funky variable that, you might get something that feels a little bit more like general AI, but even that is a little far away before it becomes feasible to use everywhere.
well, I think training AI to write AI, to create AI, if you could create an AI that could analyze a problem and then create an AI solution that would solve that problem, then I think this will all start to go forward a lot faster because machines can work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. They don't get tired. They don't have to eat. They don't have to sleep. But, that's going to take time to develop too. And we're just not there yet. Well,
Yeah, I mean, there's parts of that, but you're right. It's just needs a lot more work.
it does. I still think that small companies that are doing specific things are going to contribute to AI over time because they're creating machine skill sets that can be added to a whole. And I think I read an article way back. I think it was the CEO of OpenAI, and he was saying if somebody else gets close to AI, to general AI, well, they'll join forces with them. It's just right now, those big companies, they're all kind of on their own mission to get to it. And I do believe it's not going to all of a sudden be there one day and catch us all by surprise, because people are going to be monetizing this as they go along. As they create new capabilities that are feature rich and usable for business purposes, we'll start to see them. And that may even include intelligent robots, intelligent robots eventually that you can have in your home. And they're still not going to be as capable as humans, but they're going to be able to do certain things extremely well. So just take
Agreed.
time.
It is going to take time. But again, I really think like the focus on narrow AI or niche AI and I, right? That those are going to win over the next 3 to 5 years heavily. And there might be a new marketing term around some subdivision of it,
Yeah,
but which will get everybody excited, kind of like generative AI. Like
right.
that's very exciting. Um, but in reality, I think those are going to be the ones that monetize immediately, and then the general AI is just pretty far away.
I agree. So, what would you like people to know about AI that you think is poorly understood right now? What do you think are key misconceptions in the market?
Really, a few things. One is, you know, if you're going to go traditional programming, you're going to have true false values. For example, is this product need to be ordered true or false, right? Artificial intelligence isn't really a true false value. It's a false and not yet false. So it's continually improving. So you
Yeah,
have these confidence scores, and the confidence scores create these thresholds where you can go make decisions off of. And
right.
that's a generality, but that's something to think about. So if you're using open source, oh, sorry, open source tools to solve problems, that's great. Prototype like crazy. And there's a lot of them that you could probably go create commercial applications with, but there's quite a few that you need to probably put a little bit more work into. So normally when we go into a retailer, and I'm not going to name any names because this is quite a few of them, the first thing is we know everything there's to know about computer vision. We don't need you to tell us. We have our own team working on this stuff. And you go in here and you
Yeah,
perform, and they're like, how the hell did you do that? And it's because it's more than just like applying. You can have a principle of applying AI or computer vision to a problem, and that's great. You're going to get far. But if you don't understand it and get and like actually own the algorithms to produce that, the ceilings will always be the ceilings. And you if you want to get creative, invent a little bit. Take a risk. Like innovation is risk. That's the same thing. There's no way to have risk-free innovation. Invent some stuff, and then like those are the companies that I'm really interested in. Like that's really interesting to me. But like it seems like people don't understand that. Like that bad AI advice website, I'm using OpenAI as my back end. Like I didn't invent anything on that. It took me 4 hours to make. But
yeah,
if you know any better, it looks like, oh my God, here's a competitor. And so you get a lot of that noise in the marketplace where people can't tell the differences. So, a little education, get a little deep in what it means to on what the difference is with what's out there versus what's kind of novel.
right.
Go with the novel stuff. It's a little more expensive, takes a little more time, but it outperforms like in orders of magnitude at the end.
I got that. Yeah. Well, is there anything else that you think you'd like to cover today?
Yeah, probably. I didn't sleep a lot last night, so
Yeah, yeah. It's
but
part of the
uh,
turf.
yeah, it is. But no, I think you covered quite a bit of it. Obviously, I'm happy to, find me on LinkedIn. Anybody, Skip Howard. Happy to have conversations with anybody and tell you a little bit more about what we do. But more importantly, if you just have questions on stuff, I enjoy serving people. Like, so if I can answer questions, I'm happy to do it. I'm not out to make money all the time. Just to be a resource, I'm happy to do that. Um, and then, yeah, like I would encourage a lot of people out there to get really creative. The one message I would have to investors is not everything's SaaS anymore. right? Yes, SaaS is important, and it's great when you can make that happen, but the next wave requires a lot of hardware software combinations to create these massive value unlocks, more massive than anything probably we've had before, unless you're like Facebook or something. Um, so that's a very big wave, but it takes a lot of time and effort and cash to build robots or whatever you're going to go use on the hardware side. And then the final thing I'd say is, if I'm going to talk about what I think the future holds, I really think that the way you do data collection. So let me back up a little bit. If you're going to do something like a text chatbot, like we have great companies that have already built great large models and are improving them, by the way, not just the models, but the algorithms and all of that. So those are exist and you can go build all day long. And there's ways to design those systems where you're future proof and all that. But I think the next challenge is going to be live real time. How do you do data collection in real time? How do you do modeling in real time? And how do you do inference in real time and outputs in real time, right? And so that is going to come down to an array of your data collection sensors. I think we'll have an explosion in sensor development because the more multi-modal sensors that you can put in place, the higher confidence is and all of that in AI.
Exactly.
I think you're going to have a big explosion in edge compute, like true edge compute, because it's far less expensive to run artificial intelligence on machines that are not virtualized in the cloud
Right.
over many runs, over many times. So I think anything in real time is going to be another gold rush, and that's obviously where we play. But I'm a little biased because I see it. I see it's very difficult to do, and it's not like you can just go plug in a system and get it to work, right? It's not magical yet.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I talked to you about the experiences that Odom had in oil and gas, and how many things happen out on the edge of the enterprise that if you just had the intelligence and the machinery to capture the data, you could do so much more than you could do today. And I think that in almost every industry, processing at the edge of the enterprise is going to get a huge boost from artificial intelligence and robotics. So
Yes.
I'm looking forward to seeing how that progresses. Well, I'd love to talk all day with you. It's fun to talk to you, and you and I will probably do another podcast together soon. And
Sure.
cover some additional topics. But again, I think this was very helpful to the people out there that are trying to learn about this stuff, and what you guys are doing is super, super exciting. And I can't thank you enough for doing the podcast today, because I think people are going to be interested in it.
Yeah. No, happy to do it. I think I wish you lots of luck. I think there's so many great leaders you're going to get to talk to on this subject. And remember, my opinion's like one out of thousands upon thousands. This is just the way I see things.
Yeah, well, it's an educated, experienced opinion, though, and those are the ones that matter the most, because the people that have been there and done that, they know better. So, yeah, I really appreciate it. And you and I will obviously talk again real soon. And thanks so much for your time today.
Okay, we'll see you.
Take care. Thanks. Bye.